Welcome to Fairfax Community Church on this Sunday, August 14th. As we gather together in body, mind, and spirit to honor the Aramaic understanding of the Beatitudes. And today we're focusing on the hunger and thirst for righteousness and the hunger of the hummingbird. So I invite us just again to take a deep breath and to let it out with an extra long exhale. And to take a deep breath and to let it out with an extra long exhale. And let us be in prayer together this morning. Source of all being, ground of all goodness, we give you thanks for our ability to gather together as a community this morning. We ask that you guide all that we do and say and reflect upon to be filled with the inspiration of your Spirit. Empower us to be your people, to serve the world. In your many names we pray. Amen. I will invite us then to say together the call to worship. And if you are at home on Zoom, feel free to join in. I'm really sorry, Gary, we don't have a printed bulletin today, but we're doing the best we can. Thanks be to you, O God, for the stirrings of new life in us, for the vitality and the awakening of our body and the desires that stir our soul. Let us know the power for life that is in us, the life force that is in our senses, and the might that is in our heart. Let us know you as the source of such force and be wise to its true streams and false currents. Let us serve love with our strength this day. In heart and mind and body this day, let us serve love. And so as we prepare for our prayer time, I wanted to lead a song, and some of you may know, it might be new for others, but it comes from actually the passage in Isaiah 46, where God is describing a mother. And God says, how could I possibly forget you? Can a mother forget a child nursing in birth? And then she says, see, I cannot forget you. I've engraved you in the palms of my hand. And so that phrase, I will not forget you, was turned into a simple chant. And as we sing it, I invite us to, obviously, to remember the nurture and care that the great Mother God gives to us. And that this same nurture and care is God encircling the whole world, everyone. And what we care about, God cares about. And so God will also not forget, not forsake the needs and the hungers of society as a whole, as we work together to build the world that we want to see. So this is how the tune goes. I'll sing it once and then you can sing it. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget you. I forget you. I will never forsake you. One more time. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. I will never forget you. I will never forsake you. Amen. And so I'm going to just modify our embodied prayer practice today and invite us to do, to resurrect what is called in spiritual circles the shark fin. And that's when we take a deep breath, with our hand up, and then that's the inhale, and then the exhale, we come right down through the center of our being. And invite us to imagine ourselves surrounded like an egg of love and light in God's presence. And so as we breathe in, we breathe it into our being. And as we exhale, we bring it all the way down our central column, down our central nervous system to ground us in the earth. So let's try that 3 times. Invite us to take a deep breath. And then exhale. And then take a deep breath. And then exhale. And then take a deep breath. And then exhale. We'll invite you to please put your hand down. And then, and so we will then use this time now to come together in prayer. And if there's a prayer you would like to lift up, invite us to address God in whatever way. And it doesn't seem that our microphones are working today, so we're just going to do our best. Apologies if people on Zoom can't hear us as well. But we just address God in whatever language works best for us. God, Goddess, Eternal Spirit, Source of all being, whatever works for you. And then share the prayer, remembering we're not just telling a story or a narrative, but we're actually talking to God. And we are holding space with each other as we do that. And then to conclude by saying, God in your grace, and we say together, you hear our prayers. So I'm going to once again just center us with the sound of the bell. I invite us to lift up our prayers as we are in sacred community together this morning.
Oh Lord, please hear our planet seems ruined. Seems like the human race has no concern for the beautiful place you gave us to live in. And it's just rotting away. Please help us to be more aware and to be positive things we can do to make this a beautiful place that you gave us.
God, in your grace, you hear our prayers.
Lift up the young man who several months ago ransacked my place. I heard on Friday he died of a heroin overdose. He was only 27, and you know, Jesus is grace. Forgive him. I'll let him up to a brighter love in the future. You know, I pray that he find me a better existence. I'm sure he suffered a lot in his life to be an abuser like he was to others. So I just lift up Toby, bless him, forgive him, guide him into your love.
So we lift up Toby, who died of a heroin overdose, and pray forgiveness for his soul, and for all of those who were impacted by his actions. May there be a true release, renewal, and a new beginning. God, in your grace, you hear our prayers. Anyone on Zoom like to pray? Feel free to unmute yourself and share a prayer.
Great Mother of Creation, I share with you my concern about my sister Julie Jallet-Graglia. After 2 brain tumor surgery, she has now a 3rd one that cannot be operated, that cannot be removed, and is now developing epilepsy symptoms. I want to share my worry here and my concern, and I pray for the best treatment possible for my sister to receive and stop the crisis of epilepsies. May she be surrounded by your healing and love and energy and presence, and may all be guided to support her at that time for healing. I welcome more healing on my right eye. It needs a lot of support, love, and healing there too. And I trust the process of this outcome. God, Goddess, Mother, Holy Spirits, Holy Ones, you hear my prayer.
You hear our prayers. We continue to lift up prayers for all who are traveling in this time. We ask your blessing with Jim and Joanne as they return from Indiana this week. And we lift up the prayers that may be in our hearts that we have not put into words today out loud, but we lift them up to you now in the silence of our hearts. And we trust that you hear them. In the name of Yeshua and Mary and all your many names, we pray. God, in your grace, you hear our prayers. So as we transition into our sacred text, as we don't have, do you want to read the Beatitudes? And then, would someone, I'll sing the Shema, Tara will read the Beatitudes. Does someone want to read the Mary Oliver poem today on Zoom? Okay. Thank you, Lynn. So
I don't know how well it's going to come through. I seem to be coming through okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll read it.
Oh, this is the prayer of Jesus. Oh, okay. That's just so okay. Thank you. So, singing the Shema. Yep. So I will do my best to be Dean and Joanne today. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Reading from Matthew.
Reading from Matthew, chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. Matthew 5, 1 through 10. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."
Thank you.
And this is Summer Story by Mary Oliver. When the hummingbird sinks its face into the trumpet vine, into the funnels of the blossoms, and the tongue leaps out and throbs, I am scorched to realize once again how many small, available things are in this world that aren't pieces of gold or power, that nobody owns or could buy even for a hillside of money, that just float about the world or drift over the fields or into the gardens and into the tents of the vines. And now here I am, spending my time, as the saying goes, watching until the watching turns into feeling, so that I feel I am myself a small bird with a terrible hunger, with a thin beak probing and dipping, and a heart that races so fast it is only a heartbeat ahead of breaking. And I am the hunger and the assuagement. And also I am the leaves and the blossoms. And like them, I am full of delight and shaking.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, isn't this a delightful poem by Mary Oliver? Excuse me. I love how she describes the hummingbird. Darting in and out of flowers, sticking its whole face into the trumpet flower with this passion for living, this zest for life. I'm sure if you have hummingbird feeders, right, or tree, you've noticed that yourself. When we lived in Nicasio, there's this beautiful tree that I just call the pom-pom tree, because I don't know what it's called, but it makes these beautiful pink blossoms that look like pom-poms. And when it was in bloom, I would sit under it because I could hear the tree hum. And it made me think, oh, that's why they're called hummingbirds. Because their wings are flapping so fast, right? You can hear them. And it was like this wonderful aura that the tree had because of the presence of the hummingbird. And like you, I'm sure I'm fascinated by these little things about the hummingbirds. They're the only bird that can fly in any direction. They can fly forward and backward, up and down, and they can hover of their own volition, not just riding a current. The other interesting thing about hummingbirds is that the reason why they can expend so much energy during the day is that they fully hibernate every single night. They go into full hibernation mode and power down completely. And that's what gives them the energy to rise again the next day, which to me is a wonderful example of yin and yang held together. They do all this yang energetic stuff during the day, and then the other half at night, they fully rest. And that's what helps make their lives sustainable. The other interesting thing is that in many Native American tribes, hummingbirds are a symbol of joy. And to me, that seems so fitting because they seem like they're full of joy, literally just sucking all the juicy nectar out of life. And to me, this is what we are invited to do as well. We're invited to be like the hummingbird, sucking the juicy nectar out of life. And because we are a spiritual community, we want everybody to have access to that kind of joy. We want everybody to be able to be free enough that they can follow their passion and have all the things that they need for a sustainable life, right? To me, that is at the heart and the root of justice and social justice work. We want everybody to have the access to that kind of joy and to be able to live their passion. To me, I think that is actually at the heart of the phrase that Jesus lifts up in the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. When we look at the hunger and thirst that Jesus talks about here, it's not just for the individual. It's not just for ourselves, although it can be applied to the self. It's actually about society as a whole. It's about the collective. It's about this kind of justice, hungering and thirsting for everybody. Neil Douglas Klotz, the scholar on the Aramaic, describes the word righteousness in Aramaic in this way. This word refers to both an inner and outer sense of justice, a base upon which things can rest, the perfection of natural stability. Then he translates the entire phrase from Aramaic, saying, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for physical justice, righteousness. They shall be surrounded by what is needed to sustain their bodies. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, righteousness. They will be surrounded by what is needed to sustain their bodies." I think it's interesting that sustainability is actually worked into this phrase. Again, it's two halves of a whole, like the hummingbird. We have the yang aspect where we go out and do, and then we have the receptive aspect where we also receive what we need to sustain the journey, to sustain the quest. And I think Jesus is saying that in our work for justice, we need to actively seek spirit, not just try and do it on our own power or our own fruition. And if we do actually invite spirit in, spirit will provide what we need in that moment to sustain us, to sustain the journey. Because as we know, the work for justice can be exhausting. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So as we look at this and Jesus inviting us into a kind of sustainable quest for justice, we also notice some of the challenges that naturally come. One, to hunger and thirst in this way, there is going to naturally be a certain kind of angst involved in the process, right? Stop and think about actual physical hunger. I'm hypoglycemic. When my blood sugar starts to drop and I get hungry, there's this urgency to it, right? My body is driven for must have food now. Can't think about anything else but food until food comes. And then when that's fulfilled, there's a right? Same with thirst, if we're really thirsty. So Jesus is saying there's a natural hunger almost involved in this hunger and thirst, and that's necessary for this kind of tension, right? To change something, for something to happen. Jesus is also saying that this kind of hunger is actually blessed. He's saying that that desire for righteousness on behalf of all people is a blessed desire. Now, I think there are also some caveats that go with it. Righteousness is not to be confused with self-righteousness, where we might get up on our high horse. The work for justice, we still need to be compassionate in how we do it. And it's not just about our own individual drive, but it's about the community and the collective. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week when we talk about how we do this work of justice in community. But the desire, the hunger, Jesus is saying, is whole. That hunger then sometimes can also come with challenges. When we have this desire for everyone to experience equality and to thrive, when we witness the access to that blocked by unjust laws, discrimination, corruption, it's natural to feel angry. It kind of comes with the territory. So if we notice our hunger and thirst for righteousness, and if we notice then sometimes naturally that we are angry, how do we deal with that anger? How do we even frame it? Well, there might be a few things that might help our reflection, and I'm sure you have your own ideas about it that we could share. First, I think it's important also in a spiritual context to just validate the anger. The anger itself is not a bad thing. We have somehow thought that that is less than spiritual. Anger itself is not necessarily a bad thing. As we know, it's what we do with the anger and what we say with the anger that is the challenge. Being angry doesn't necessarily give us license to just do or say whatever we want. We see this in Paul's writings when the Apostle Paul said, "In your anger, do not miss the mark. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." So clearly Paul is saying it's natural to feel angry. But when we do, it doesn't give us license to just do whatever we want or to say whatever we want. We're invited to, as Ruth would remind us, kind of a nonviolent communication to then say what we need. And sometimes that can be challenging to know how to channel our anger into a kind of productivity. I think it's interesting that Gandhi, as you may know, was asked how it is that he could be such a spiritual person in his work for justice and never get angry. And he said, "Oh, I'm angry every day. I'm angry all the time. I'm just channeling it into constructive action." So again, I think that shows us that the feeling itself is not necessarily bad, but it's what we do with it, how we express it. How can we turn it into something productive that works for social change? To me, I think this other poem that I shared a few weeks ago maybe gives us a clue about that. A few weeks ago, I shared the poem, I'm Not Saying We Shouldn't Be Angry by Rosemary Watola Tromer. It was unfortunately the same week that Ruth passed, so we didn't unpack that at that time. But I want to lift it up again now because I think it gives us some clues for how to process our anger in a way that then we can come to a place of productivity. And this is the poem by Rosemary Watola Tromer. I'm not saying we shouldn't be angry. Anger seems reasonable. But perhaps we will do what I've heard the Inuit do. Spend the emotion on walking. Walk a line until all the anger has left our bodies. The moment the Inuit notice the anger is gone, replaced perhaps by sadness or fear, compassion, or just a quietness, They mark that spot with an object to show the extent of their anger. And perhaps, if we're lucky, when we walk this way, it will be a long enough walk that we arrive at each other's doors, object in hand. And when the object leaves our grip, we will be able to use our hands to greet one another, touch each other's faces, point to the horizon, and all the other places we might choose to now walk together. Isn't that a beautiful poem? I love that idea of the Inuit walking with the anger until it's shifted into something where they can work together, collaborate. What if we actually try that as a spiritual practice? If we're watching the news or reading the news and we come into this kind of righteous angst, we literally pick up a rock and maybe go walk around the block or the backyard or go for a hike until it's shifted in a way and we then release the rock. Or if we aren't able to go for a walk at that time, get out all the color crayons and scribble or put on some music and dance. Something that allows us to express it. But the point then isn't just to do that so we feel better. I think if we can process it in that way, then maybe get to the next step where we ask from a more centered place, okay, Spirit, now how are you calling me to respond? I think the challenge can be sometimes if we don't do that and we just sit with the anger, two things might happen. One, we know that that kind of cortisol running through our system is not good for our health, to be in fight or flight all the time. And second of all, we might actually end up feeding the anxiety and not really the hunger. If we then are tempted to sort of just assuage it with food or alcohol or some sort of quick fix in the moment, it might kind of then make us feel better, but not really get to the hunger for righteousness. So sometimes maybe if we can express it or allow the anger to move through us first, and then come to the centered place, and then actually ask Spirit, how are you calling me to respond in this moment? Now the response might be very simple, or it might be more complex. Because we know we can't respond to absolutely everything, because in the news, we're constantly inundated with things, and that can leave us feeling overwhelmed and grief-stricken. But we might be able to send energy to that thing. Not just a thought or a prayer, God, please help them, but literally send love and light and energy. That is something we can do. If it's something that we notice again over time in the news, we might feel actually now we're called to give financial support. Or maybe if it's something that we notice within us, that hunger and thirst just won't go away. Maybe we are then called to volunteer. Maybe we're called to phone a friend and say, hey, will you help me with this project? Because I want to respond somehow. Or we plug into a network that's already responding and give them support. As we know, the options are many. But I think it would be interesting to reflect on it almost like a Lectio Divina and just notice what's stirring in my soul. Am I being called to respond to this? And if so, how? Sometimes that might be able to flow more easily if we also let the emotions flow through us so that we can get to a place of productive action. I think ultimately Jesus reminds us that the hunger and the thirst in and of themselves are wholly blessed things. So how can we work with that passion so that we, like the hummingbird, might allow it to fuel us in our lives in a way that's sustainable, so we can help build a kind of community where everyone has access to that kind of joy in their lives. So I invite us then to just take a moment and to just sit with that. Just take a moment and drink that all in and notice what you notice. Just to take a deep breath and let it out with an extra long sigh. What do you notice from the example of the hummingbird for the phrase from the Aramaic, to hunger and thirst for righteousness in a way that is also sustainable. Or from the story about the Inuit people, how they embody their anger until it leads them to share and connect in community. Or anything else you might be noticing. Where is spirit stirring in your soul? So I invite us then again to just take a deep breath. And so I invite us to then just share whatever collective wisdom we might have. We're noticing, either about the text or the poem or anything else. And if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand or raise your hand on Zoom and take yourself off mute, and we can notice what we are noticing together.
If no one else there wants to speak, I'll speak for a while. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that so often happens. This service, this sermon are so timely. This has been a pretty triggering, I think I could use that word, week with what's been coming out of Mar-a-Lago. Sorry to have to bring that up, but it's just so central to my being right now. Just a whole range of difficult emotions, fear, anger, also some hope and for justice, and the feeling of helplessness because it's so big, and all I've been able to think of is to pray. But you just lifted up a lot of other ways to deal with this. So, and some of them I know, of course, but I forget. So thank you so much. And I did love the Inuit way. Among other things, I know, and I do practice getting some of the emotion and out of my body by movement. But then it can go farther than that. And there are so many ways that we can be of service and try to make this country, this planet, better, even in our small individual ways. So thank you, and I'm so glad to have a community to work with all of this. And of
Thank
course, I have to mention MOC, which is our the organization that's working for justice right in this county, and our church is a part of it. So
Yeah.
slip that up, but that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And I appreciate you also lifting up MOC because it reminds us that there are really concrete things happening in our backyard that we are a part of. Thank you so much for your work with them. And yeah. Yeah, Manoush.
I like to share what is maybe another approach of anger, another angle of looking at anger, which is just energy, right? It's just pure energy. So it's not bad, it's not good. It's an incredible, powerful energy. If we can channel it into something for the goodness of all, that's wonderful. I like to share what my teacher, one of my teacher, was suggesting about anger. She was defining anger as anger is love plus fear under pressure. Anger is love plus fear under pressure. If I didn't have any love in my heart, whatever is happening in the world or in my life or in my friend's life or whatever, I would not feel angry if I didn't care. So I'm suggesting if we can look at what is the pressure that creates this energy of love plus fear, what is the pressure? Can we release a little bit that pressure? How can we do it? And yes, I love the idea of, or the, not the idea, but the way the Inuits, work out their anger, work out their energy. It's a beautiful way. And there are so many other ways, as you mentioned, dancing or what, moving, building. And I suggest, can we look at the fear component of the anger? It seems to be the root cause of this anger. There will always be pressure around. There will always be pressure on the planet, maybe more or less, and we all pray and work toward less pressure. But life is bringing pressure in our lives and challenges. That's pressure. If we can look at oneself, fear, what is my fear about in this situation that I feel so angry? And can I address that? Can I hold my own fear, own my own fear, be aware of it? How can I replace, or how can I love that fear so I can be more in alignment with the love part of my experience, and so I can be of service in a better way. Once I come back within at a more peaceful or more balanced emotional state, then I can offer a better service.
Right.
How do I take care of my own fear?
Right.
That's one way to look at it and approach it. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I love that, Manoush. Thank you for sharing that. It's a brilliant reflection, and especially, like you said, it can just help us be more conscious of what it is we're feeling, whatever it is, whatever the injustice is. Maybe have more compassion on what we're feeling, and help us just to be more conscious of it. So, like you said, we can respond maybe even more productively. I'm going to really continue to reflect on that. Thank you. It's a great wisdom piece that you've introduced us to. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that our sister is feeling anger. What I feel is angry about people not feeling angry about what's happening to the earth, for instance.
Right.
The Mother Earth is suffering.
Right.
The soil is polluted.
Right.
The water is polluted.
Right.
The air is polluted.
Yeah.
Minds, men and women are polluted.
Right.
I'm concerned that we're not angry.
Right.
We should be doing something. Oh, well, so it's going to hell.
Right.
I wish I had more of your anger, sister. I'd do more about that thing.
Yeah.
Instead of just, well, that's the way it is, and just let it go along. I wish we could feel and think. I almost want something as the fundamentalists say, come back, Jesus.
Right.
This is when you're needed.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a really good point. And there are times like Manoush is saying, I mean, it is the energy that drives us forward, that inspires us to take action, right? I do think, especially when we're looking at the planet, a lot of people do care. It's just so overwhelming. It's that it actually elicits grief, and we get stuck in that because we don't know how can we possibly respond to something that's so big, and then that overwhelm leads to almost a kind of lethargy. So I think a lot of people do care passionately. It's just we don't know what to do about it, other than the things we're already doing. But you're right. I mean, it's the bringing that passion to, you know, bringing people together to take action on a, you know, on a communal way, that the anger itself does fuel the desire, for sure. Yeah, and agree. Yeah.
I think the idea of anger fueling something very much does apply to me in that, in January of 2017, when we had, you know, a change of government, I was so shocked. I came to this church and I started working in food bank. So I do understand that, I mean, I can understand how my anger can be channeled. I also appreciate your tools for working it through. The only thing I would say is that I'm speaking about anger that I feel as a member of the dominant culture. So it takes sometimes my looking on the news to even feel that impact. When I'm a person of color or a marginalized person in this society, I'm dealing with microaggressions on daily, on hourly sometimes, whenever I'm seen on the street. I have to humbly admit, I have no idea what that anger feels like. And I am called as a white person, as a member of the dominant culture, as a privileged person with enough money to be safe. It is my job, I think, every day to listen. Because that processing of anger, there's an anger out there that I don't understand. I need to be educated.
Yeah, right.
And it may take years and years of studying the history that we have ignored for us to understand better what we've done to those who are oppressed. So that's an aspect of anger where I do something that it's another person's anger. I'm there to bear witness and to understand better. So then, I mean, what I do appreciate is that I've met a lot of people whose anger brought them into community. And I think that is one, as I work, you know, in my small way in social justice, it's incredibly supportive and wonderful to be in a community that's all pointed in that same direction. So that is something I can do. And I also just have to.
Right. So, I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's that what I'm hearing you say is another aspect of the anger itself is hope. Is that part of what you're saying? The anger in and of itself. So we're invited, as you said, to listen to the anger of another and not judge it. Is that part of what you're saying? Because the anger of,
You know, I don't know where it's going to go. I think my first step in this process has been to be in a listening stance.
right.
You perhaps could look at that and say it's holy as a pastor. I'm not sure. I'm just seeing it as my calling.
Yeah.
What I'm required to do in this moment, and listen, absorb, reflect. And yes, you can certainly move forward, but first you just have to
Listen.
be there for people. And I don't know where their anger goes.
Right.
I've never been persecuted.
Right. So listening to is what I hear. What I hear you say, that's part of the component. Part of the component also of the suit, and the hunger and thirst for righteousness. Part of it is for us to listen, to others, and for their own oppression and their own desire for a just society. And I assume there was no.
They can often meet us.
Yes.
It's something I've learned.
Yes.
Is to join forces with the folks who are trying to change within that community after I've educated myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
It comes to mind how Jesus even expressed it,
Sure.
and maybe not socially acceptable.
Right.
Now, he turned over the
Yeah,
tables.
yeah.
So, I guess that was about, we are just attached to our needs, our material things, money. It's a lack of faith. I can see what's angry that we really didn't have faith in God. And we put things like money, turn the temple into a marketplace. So Jesus comes in like a madman and wants to turning over the tables.
Right.
So,
Right.
It's
a really good point, Gary. If you heard, Gary was lifting up the story of Jesus overturning the tables, and that's a great example because we notice Jesus wasn't just reacting to his own personal slight.
Right.
He was criticized a lot and didn't respond with anger, but it was when the community was being blocked from worship, that's when he let it rip, right? So that's another great example of a social injustice. That's where he really let his anger fly. So yeah, that's a good, we think of Jesus, Jesus has been turned into this kind of wimpy milquetoast guy. Really, he's not, right? Yeah, so yeah, that's a great example. Thank you. So there's this great, Patty, was there anything, did you want to share? Or I don't want to miss you. Manish wants to share, okay.
Am I on mute here? I'm not sure.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, good. There is another aspect that I like to just remember, and as we are all one, we are all unified, we are all connected. The victim and the perpetrators are in me too.
Right.
So how about holding the perpetrator part on it? I am also a perpetrator. I am also this one who is causing pain. How about, I love this practice of the Ho'oponopono. I am sorry. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
That energy of owning what causes pain, and that energy of saying, I am sorry and I love you, is bringing that energy of love and compassion as we all are connected. And I think there is a place for everything, the taking action and in the doing something in the world, and in the taking action of the, where is my anger? What is my anger? And what is my fear? And taking action of, I own my own, part of the story. And that's what I do with it. I apologize and I send love. There are so many things, so many aspects, so many approaches. And we all have our own way to participate into bringing more harmony and kindness on this planet. It's just, I wanted to share the Ho'oponopono and the power of owning our own pain and pain.
Thank you for that, Manish, because that brings us back, as you said, to the power of community. And one way that we are, or as Young said, we look at something and say, I am that too. And that's really humbling. When we look at that and say, I am that too, that brings humility real quick. So that's a beautiful way, as we're talking about, then that brings healing. So yeah, thank you for that. reminder. That's amazing. Wonderful. Anybody else? No, that's fine. So we've got another little treat actually that I'd love for us to take time for. It's this music video, and it's was actually shown within our presbytery meeting from the racial justice team within our presbytery. And it's what's interesting, I think, about the way it's the music, but it's literally showing us kind of what it's like to pray the news, because she's set the whole music video within as if it's within a newspaper. But it's also about the power of how do we work together and walk together as community to make the world a better place. So, Gabe, if you can share screen, we'll receive the, just notice, let me notice the music.
Walk with me through every fire in the land. Walk with me, a time of love is close at hand. Let's come together, united we stand, side by side, step by step. Walk with me, when our brothers and sisters cannot breathe, let it be known we won't back down, we won't leave. When we're facing any kind of struggle, there's a hero there trying to wash away all of your troubles. Walk with me through the drama, these days will pass. Walk with me, a time of love is close at hand. Let's come together, united we stand, side by side, step by step. Walk with me. So take a hand and let's dive into the water. And every now and then, being human, we're gonna falter, but we'll press on and be strong, and we will survive it. And every path that's wrong, together we can ride it. Walk with me through every painful hurt we've had. Walk with me, a time of love is close at hand. Let's come together, united we stand, side by side, step by step. Walk with me. Mighty winds may howl around us. It seems we find ourselves on rocky ground. Death is on repeat, but one thing seems clear to me. Some may hate us, but they'll never break us. Together with love, it's more than enough. Walk with me through every madness, if you can. Walk with me. A time of love is so close at hand. Come together, people, united we stand, side by side, step by step. Won't you walk with me? Won't you walk together? Won't you walk together finally? No more divides, no more lines, no more please.
Amen. Joss Stone,
Joss.
Joss Stone.
Her name is Joss.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't recognize her. She was kind of a phenom at a very young age. Yeah, you didn't know. Oh. I'm so old, I remember such things.
Great.
It's a lovely thing right now.
Yeah, powerhouse. And I love how they brought it together with all these different aspects of the news, and it reminds us that we're not alone, right? We're not trying to do this work alone. It's when we come together in community from the love, as you were talking about, Manoush, that is the power that will allow us to help change the world, even just one little bit at a time. So think about what's our one little bit of love that we're going to share today, in some way out the world. So thank you so much. So I'm going to invite us then to say together gather all this up in our hearts and then share our closing blessing together, which you can also do on Zoom if you got it, and then we'll sing our closing song. Created as one soul, made in the holy image, our deepest desires are your desires, O God. Our deepest instincts are your instincts. Renew in us our sacred longings. Revive in us our first thirsts and our hunger for right relationship. That wars may cease and all of your children may enjoy abiding peace. May it be so. Amen. So I invite us to sing our closing song, and we can stand, and then we won't actually hold hands, but we'll put out our hands so that we remember that we are in sacred community together, and invite us to sing our Alleluia. 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 Okay, great. Amen. Okay, may we go in peace to love and serve God and each other. So great to see everyone. Again, next week we're talking about the community itself, how we do this together in community. And so come back next week. Any other little announcements? Okay, great. So thank you so much. Thank you, Gabe. Lots of love to you. Big hugs to you, Gabe. Great, thank you. And blessings to everybody. Good to see you, Patty. Thank you, Gabe.
Enjoy your sermon, brother.
Pardon me?